Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Cookbook. I'm your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I'm excited about our guest today, Cheryl Martin. We've been speaking for months, and Cheryl's career is pretty cool. I'm going to let her talk about it, but I'm going to read her bio, and then I'm going to bring her on. So Cheryl's career in the human growth and development arena has included consulting in the areas of program development, leadership, company culture dynamics, but always involved change and coaching. As a seasoned coach, she brings this vast experience to her present coach practice. She offers a unique blend of psychological insight, intuitive understanding, and practical strategy, facilitating a transformative process that leads to dynamic action and growth. Her approach is deeply rooted in self-exploration, awareness, and the balanced nurturing of mind, body, and spirit. Through a comprehensive journey of introspection, healing, and renewal, she helps clients overcome obstacles, recover from setbacks, and rediscover their enthusiasm for life. Her coaching is not just about navigating the present, it's about crafting a roadmap to an extraordinary future. It's about transforming crossroads into highways of possibility, ensuring that each client is equipped to pursue a path filled with purpose, passion, and fulfillment. Whether you're navigating personal crossroads, seeking to revitalize your consulting or other career, or exploring new life paths, Cheryl's approach is tailored to help you create a future filled with purpose, passion, and fulfillment. So without further ado, let's meet Cheryl.
Hi there.
Hi. I feel like this has been like a roadblock, but we finally busted through.
I know we've been on a bit of a journey ourselves, haven't we?
Really,
it's good to see you. This is the first time I've seen you live in a bit, so it's nice to be here.
I know. Yeah,
on camera. Here we are.
Yeah. So tell us about Cheryl.
Wow. So, do you want to know about me or what I do?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you do, and then we can talk about your journey on how you got there.
Perfect. So I think the best way for me to tell you about my coaching is, so Iris, picture yourself at a crossroads where every path seems to lead back to familiar but unfulfilled place.
Okay.
Now, imagine that there's a way to transform that crossroads.
So into fulfillment?
Into a launch pad, I want to say, to create a fabulous future. So that's kind of what I do. I mean, that's really, so as a holistic and transformative coach, I really take clients on, I guess, through a process of self-recovery, healing, and renewal. So we don't just address transition, we reframe it as a fabulous opportunity to create a vibrant future.
Nice.
So that's kind of a headline, and I'm probably saying some of what you've already said, but I would say that my expertise lies in guiding clients to become deeply self-aware, first of all, and I help them clarify their goals and values and navigate the obstacles on their path. So we're kind of on a journey of recovery and healing together. And we tackle, I would say, the emotional, mental, physical challenges head on. So then, this is great. So then once we do that, so then clients can rediscover their passion and drive, and this enables them to transform their outlook. And then they're ready to take proactive steps.
Nice.
Toward where they want to go. So hopefully that all makes sense. But it's not just about overcoming challenges. I like to say it's about seizing opportunities for growth.
Yeah, but that's really great because there are, I'm sure a lot of our listeners, right, are probably at that crossroads. I think we all come to that point in our life, in our career, where we're like, what's that? What does that next step look like?
Yeah.
And how do I look in that next step? Like, is that right? And that's really important. I mean, my transformation happened like, a couple of years in the making, but when I realized what it was, and you're right, it takes a lot of inner work. It takes a lot of inner work, right? Like you really need to be able to look at and know yourself in order to transform.
Yeah, and I'd love to speak to that because, I'm really kind of zeroed in on late life stage. And I guess the reason for that is, well, first of all, I love that stage, but also it's, as you alluded to, it's the stage in life when it's pretty natural for us to, you know, start questioning and pondering, what direction do we want to take? Maybe we've had some, epiphany or inner realization or whatever. But what I find is that some of these same things that we might have earlier in life, whether it's a desire to change or some issue, we're usually not ready to deal with it. And it's probably because we're successful, we're busy. Who wants to look at that? There's no real reason to do that. But what happens, I find with my clients, Iris, is that when they're at that midlife or late stage and they're at a crossroads, they're more willing to look at the deeper stuff under it, like, well, why would I want to do that or whatever? Why? Because having a healthy, vibrant life depends on it.
Right.
They kind, you kind of know you're going to have to go through that process in order to have that thing that you want. Whereas earlier in life, you really didn't, maybe it wasn't as important yet or whatever. But so that's why I think, what I find again is that clients are more willing, and I can certainly talk a little bit about my process, but it isn't just deep. One of my differentiators, I would say, is that my approach to transition is both inside out and outside in. And what I mean by that is, when I describe what I do, it's easy for someone to think, oh my God, she's really deep. And is that, we're just going to sit in that depth. Mm-hmm. But what I think is important simultaneously, and again, I kind of want to go through high level my process, but it simultaneously there are outside things going on, outside activities, events, whatever. I mean, you have to be participating in life alongside of doing that deeper work, mm-hmm. Because it kind of prepares you for whatever it is you want to launch or do. So I find that is really a distinguisher in my world anyway. Yeah.
That's awesome. And, it's interesting because especially later in life, we're ready. We're just ready to do whatever that thing is because, it's like I see so many people that retire and then they don't do anything. And then they just like veg out. And they literally veg out, like they just become it almost immobile, and I think to keep your mind going, to keep going, you have to have something to keep you going. It's like I always joke, like when I sell this in whatever, 6-7 years, whatever, my business, my wife's like, you're not going to stop working. And she's probably right. I'll probably consult because I love what I do. Right. Like I I found what really speaks to me. And I think that, after this, I love guiding people. I love helping people. So not that I'm going to become a coach, because I'm not. I may just, consult every once in a while and then, whatever. But I think it's really important to have something. But I think the inner work is really important as well, because the better we know ourselves, the better we can get ourselves on the right track. But having a coach like you, right, would, help somebody get and figure out what that is. So you were talking about your process.
Yeah. So, well, I want to first say that I think those people that you referenced, probably they're in that familiar place. So, we can forgive them because they're not inspired yet. But,
Right.
but so my process, and I love this actually, my process can really kind of be found in my logo. And I kind of call it my creating extraordinary future process, but it's three phases. It's reflect, regenerate, and revitalize. And just to kind of really headline those, it's like reflect, just sort of looking inward and assessing, like doing that life review. And then regenerate is about healing and new perspectives, right? Revitalize is, newfound passion. And this is when we're more energized. So there's energized action happening. But, if we think about just that first stage, for instance, the reflection process is about understanding where we are, acknowledging where we've been, and then navigating where we want to go, right? So it's really a powerful tool for growth. And if I think about it, it's kind of a celebration of the pivotal moments that have shaped us, right? And so if we think about, like, if I think about what would take a client into this process, I think about, so in our lives, as we've kind of already alluded to, there's something that catalyzes change, right? There's something that's moved within us that makes us want to look deeper and look at, or maybe there's something we know we want to do. So I usually, in this reflective process, there's kind of two phases. And the first one is sort of a present situation focus, where I have clients sharing where they are currently. So it's like, what challenges am I currently facing and what changes does that suggest? Right. So that's kind of becomes the sort of one of the driving questions. But then once we've kind of gone there and that's pretty understood and steady, the second phase is exploring the positive past experiences, right? And how do those connect to where we are today? Because we might find that it probably informs us about what was important, and maybe it still is, right? So just that reflective process, and it can be short or it can be long. And these three phases aren't necessarily, they don't necessarily have a line in the sand beginning and end. They kind of bleed into one another. But especially when we're in that healing, regenerative place, sometimes, a client they might remember something else that they forgot to reflect on, and we go back there. So it's a little bit of back and forth. But I think that really my signature work is this process, because what I find is, the typical transition processes, if you will, are great. And they really do a service, and they kind of skim the surface. And I think in order to really, like, this process has so proven with clients that they really do end up creating what they want in life. we can call it an extraordinary future or whatever, but whatever it is, whether they want to volunteer, they want to continue to work or whatever, and keeping in mind that, it's so easy for us when we talk about transition, we kind of tend, especially these days, to relate it mostly to career transition, because a lot of people indeed in this stage of life, especially, are leaving work that they do and maybe becoming entrepreneurs or whatever. But there are a myriad. In fact, I want to give, this brings to mind, if I think we have time for a quick client example, because one of my clients who actually had retired early, he had been VP of marketing in a large corporation, and someone referred him to me. And he'd already retired, but he just knew he wasn't finished working. He wanted to do something else, but he didn't know what that was. So we kind of, went through this process. And when he was in the reflective phase, one of the things that he kept referencing from his previous role was that not often enough, but every once in a while, he had the opportunity to mentor someone. But normally he didn't have much time for that, but he realized that he really had a passion for that. He really loved it. And so we didn't spend a lot of time there, but as we moved through, he had some things he wanted to heal, maybe some experiences in his role that he wasn't very fond of, or that really were even wounding. But somehow he thought about writing a book. He thought about all these other things that he could do. And somehow he kept coming back to that. And to make a long story short, he ended up consulting back to that organization just as a mentor. And what he did is he mentored new people coming into the organization, because he had been there so long, he knew the whole shtick.
All the ins and outs and everything.
Yeah. And so, it can be, and some people just, when we think about crossroads, I also want to make something clear. It can be change, or it can be just growth. Some people come and they just want to embrace personal growth in general. Mm-hmm. They just feel some need to, maybe there's an area of their life that they keep getting triggered by or whatever, and they want to figure that out. So there's all kinds of ways, situations, I guess, beyond career transition. But I tell you, I'm so stoked by this process, especially that second phase in the reflective process. I hesitate to call this out because I'm almost afraid someone will steal it, because I'm going to launch it on social, but I call it Moments That Mattered. And it's a whole thing that people really get into and actually enjoy, telling their stories. And some people even go back to age 8 and they have some story about some little thing in grade school that was just really important to them. But in that was a passion. And then when they really think about it, it's like, wow, yeah, I really did enjoy, So I just think there's a lot to the process for people that want to do a bit more than skim the surface, I guess is what I would say.
Okay. I think that we all have that one pivotal moment in our childhood, right? That kind of shapes the rest of our lives, be it, positive or negative. I know like there's like trauma, and then there's also, something positive that puts us on this trajectory. And I think that, as we grow older, for me, it's like I've always been young at heart. Music has always been my thing, and I always go back to it. I leave it, and then I go back to it. It's like, remember in The Godfather? He's like, I try to leave, but they keep pulling me back in. That's how it feels with me and music. But that's always the thing that I go back to, and cooking, which is why my company is Gasstovecreative, because I love cooking. And it's these two things for me that I always go back to, and I always find solace in. So if I'm going through something, I'll make a pot roast or, whatever, or I'll, pick up the guitar, or now I'm in a band. I'll, we'll do band practice. But I think we all have these like pivotal moments. And what I find is, because, I know like so many coaches, every coach that I know has their own specialty and their own technique in coaching. And it fascinates me because you do coaching your way. My other client, Michelle, is an executive coach or leadership coach for not-for-profits. My friend Scott is like, I know like all these different coaches, and everybody does something different. But at the end of the day, you're helping people get to this place that they probably couldn't get to without you. And I think that's so important.
It's whatever future they want, and to your point about loving cooking and music, like it's not, oftentimes people think they have to give up what they do in order to do this thing that they're, my avocation is photography, and it has been for over 20 years. In fact, I published a journal on it a couple of years ago, but I don't have to not do this in order to do that. I mean, you can still cook and do music and do this with me. So that's the other thing that people...
And I can cook and do music. Well,
yeah.
I'm cooking, sing, and,
but... You can do them at the same time.
I'm saying, yes.
But yeah, I mean, and sometimes people spend quite a bit of time just sorting through that. It's like, well, I love music. Do I love it enough that I want to make it my career or a major piece? Or am I fulfilled in just having it as an avocation,
Right.
But I think that's another thing that, my own transition to this work from transformational consulting work with organizations was simply, and it was in midlife. So I get to check both boxes, I guess. But
yeah, and you had your own transition that you went through.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's the thing. So you can speak from a place of experience, having gone through it. Because I watched you go through, some of it, and
the front end of it. Yeah.
The front end of it. Yeah. And I think that it's fascinating to me because you worked with a coach. And what people don't realize is that, I think sometimes people mistake the need for a coach as something negative when it's really something positive. I think it's like a kind of therapy in a way, right? And there's...
Well, and anymore that really isn't, it kind of used to be true in corporates. When, like if a supervisor suggested that one of her employees have a coach, that person was probably going to immediately assume, oh my God, I'm in trouble. That isn't even true there anymore. Now, honestly, I can't tell you, I have very few friends who don't have coaches, and they're healthy people. Mm-hmm. It just kind of, it helps you track, it keeps you, And the other thing I guess I would say is, my belief and perception, and it's just mine, is that any coach worth anything better have a coach themselves.
Right.
So, yes, I had a wonderful coach, and I'll have a coach again. But there's such a full conversation here. I could go on and on. But one of the things with my transformation that is probably noteworthy is that I was already, well, first of all, I guess I feel pretty darn credible because I've got, graduate work in psychology. I'm certified as a coach. Transition and change has been my work as a consultant as well for many, many years. So, the reason that I shifted from doing change in the consulting world to working with individuals is that as a consultant, there just wasn't time for me to, you know, work with leaders and anyone in the workplace, I guess. I mean, they're just my role, especially the longer I did it, was to develop the strategy and the plans and do the assessing. So any coaching that happened, even though I did coach, certainly it was more surface because there just wasn't time. And my epiphany was when I started realizing I'd be working with an individual and I would realize, oh my God, I really wish I could help her. I knew what she needed, but it wasn't my role to do that.
That
And
must have
so,
been
because I was building strategy and doing all this other big stuff. So that was my pivot is, and I had, by the way, coached much earlier in my career before I became a consultant. So coaching was not new to me. I just didn't have a practice. So I've kind of got all the pieces at this point, and it's time to just be kind of relishing in it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I think what you, oh, hang on one second. Never fails. I always get like a delivery in the middle of a,
oh yeah,
every single time. It's just like, it's funny. And I think they also just want, to have a little bit of say in what we're doing. So this is for entrepreneurs and people thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. And since you've worked with so many, different kind of people, you've worked with leaders. Have you worked with people who were just like, I'm done and now I want to become an entrepreneur?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say I think that's a pretty common catalyst for change, is that people like me think either there's something else that they want to do on their own, or they don't want to be part of a company anymore, or both. It can happen in many different ways, but yeah, many entrepreneurs for sure. The other thing, this is a good moment to throw this in, because I don't want to forget the other individuals that I coach pretty commonly. In fact, I have 2 of these clients now, is consultants in large firms, because I was in a large firm, and understanding the nuances within large consulting firms is something in and of itself. I mean, so I help them manage the complexities of that work environment, because it's so multifaceted. I mean, when you think about it, like when I was in a large consulting firm, as a manager, you're managing the client relationship, you have junior consultants that you're managing. It's just that there's so much relationship dynamic that it becomes really complex. So I really love helping consultants navigate workplace challenges. And this is much different than an entrepreneur consultant, because that's a whole different world, obviously. But that is the other, my other ideal client.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
Wow. Well, probably a few things, but first and foremost, you gotta, I think, be sure that you feel passionate and driven to do it. I mean, you got to be excited. I'll say that one of my biggest obstacles as an entrepreneur, and you'll remember this one, Iris, is that I'm kind of a quick start person. I mean, it's just my personality. And so when I decided to build a coach practice, it was sort of like, it was natural for me to go out and grab all the things that I probably should do.
Yep.
Right. And grabbing and entrepreneurs, as you know, we're faced with all these shiny objects, millions of them. And so what I would say is my biggest obstacle was jumping in too quick. And as much as I hate to admit this, I wasn't excited yet. I just wasn't excited yet. Why? Because I was so busy looking at who's going to be excited when you're doing all this administrative stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is sort of a caution, I would say, because there's a difference between having the idea and being excited. You got the idea, and now you're, pondering, you're thinking, you're planning, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're excited about it.
Mm-mm.
Because
you were like, it's like you were, but you weren't. And then I remember you took that other corporate job for like a minute. It was like I think it was like a week. And then you were like, yeah, I'm not doing it.
Oh, no. I didn't ever take a job. It was a consulting.
That's what I mean. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. I should rephrase that. Yeah, no, you had that consulting gig. And like after a week, you were like, no, which I thought was, I was like, okay, so she's definitely ready to do this other thing. But you had, I remember.
Well, yeah. And I mean, not to get too deep into my experience, but just to say that it's not just me. I mean, people that my clients go through this same thing. It's like, well, they have this idea. And when you have the idea, you're really excited about it. But then you start looking at all the components of it. And the excitement kind of wanes for a bit.
It gets overwhelming
because you're in your head and you're so busy with all this stuff. Like I was like, well, is it Instagram? Where should I, I mean, there are just a million questions. Should I have a VA? Oh, well, maybe I don't need that yet. I mean, there's just a lot to consider.
Right.
So yeah, I would say that would be my advice, is be sure to be focusing. Out of all the things you can think about and focus on the things that excite you. Right.
And just talking, bringing your experience up just to kind of show that you've been there, and it's, you've done the work. And it's interesting because so I spoke to somebody here a couple of weeks ago who was like, I've been watching you for the last 2 years, which kind of freaked me, not in a weird way, and he was like, I watched you go from holy shit, now what, to having this successful business, having your podcast, having, a TV show, like all these different things. He goes, and I watched you, and he said it was just like the most amazing transformation because, you went, thank you, Piper. You went from, could you hear them loud or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Sometimes people are like, I can't hear them. But he was like, you went from this, through this transformation, and it wasn't just like the professional piece, but it was the personal piece. It was what I personally went through. And for me, it was a lot of looking inward, but also a lot of letting people in. Yeah. Which I didn't do before, because I was so guarded, and I was so like, oh, this, I got screwed so many times before that you're just going to try and screw me, blah, 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 blah. And being able to let that go was huge. And my partner, so I run a not-for-profit, I co-founded it with my friend Michelle, and we had our gala this week, and we do an annual gala, and Michelle was very like, she couldn't let things go. Like like we couldn't have volunteers because they would get it wrong. And so she had to do it. And this year she let it go. Like she could have sang Frozen, let it go, because she did. And it was amazing watching these volunteers do the stuff that she would normally do. And she looked at me and she was like, I freaking let it go. She was like, I did it. And I said, you did it. And I gave her a giant hug. I'm like, that's huge. And then I ended up like, normally she would have a meltdown. I had a meltdown, but that was like another story. But it was so amazing to watch that, to watch her literally be okay with other people doing stuff.
And to your point, I think that what can steer people from, doing coaching work or whatever form their work might take is the personal piece, because there always is. I mean, it's always an inside job. I know that's a kind of a trite thing that we keep hearing, but it's true.
I don't think it's trite. I don't think that's trite at all.
Well, good. I mean, it truly, there's always, I mean, it's all about, especially now when we're all honoring authenticity so greatly, you know, getting there, as you alluded to too, many of us have, our careers have helped us polish ourselves to the point where, you know, it's quite a process to really show ourselves fully.
Yeah.
And that's always part of the work. And I do find, even with the client that I mentioned, his name was Charlie, but I mean, talk about somebody who had to be polished, right? And now he got to just show up in his, you know, sweatshirt or whatever and mentor these people. I mean, just that piece of being casual was a big deal for him. So, yeah, you know, and it's, so there's a lot, but I again, I go back to being willing to go through these stages really sets you up to be able to, because as I said early on, you know, once people really get in touch with their passion and drive, we just naturally seem to transform our outlook. It's like then we're saying, oh, yeah, now, you know, I feel so passionate, I know I can do it. Before the passion, their outlook was just fear. It was like, well, I don't know if I can do that. And so that's what it takes. And until clients are at that point, they're probably not going to take proactive steps. And, you know, so you can't have a coaching process where a coach is just like giving you assignments and, you know, stuff that you're supposed to do.
Right.
That has to evolve naturally out of passion.
Yeah.
People want to do it. You know, coaching, again, my perspective, coaching isn't about, and by the way, another benefit to my coaching is my sincere belief that we all have our own answers inside. And what I want to say about that is, what happens is it sets up self-belief. People become, once, you know, they start, like if I take them through a discovery process where they come up with their own answers, what it does is over time, it builds confidence. They're like, oh, you know, it's kind of a jolt because they really didn't get that before.
Yeah.
And that confidence is necessary for them to be willing to embark on exploring and going after their desire. Because if they don't believe that, I mean, again, another belief I have, a coach doesn't have your answers, you do.
Right.
A good coach just helps you find them.
Right.
So, but that self-belief is one of my strong approaches, and I think it builds confidence. So
I think that's really important, because if you know, we don't have confidence in what we're doing, we're not going to do it well. We're not going to believe in ourselves. We're going to have imposter syndrome because we don't believe, you know, we don't believe that we could do it. And I think that that's really important. So there are seasoned entrepreneurs that listen to this too, right? And we all go through our obstacles. And I say, you know, we all have obstacles, and they can be stopping stones or stepping stones, that it's up to us. So what is an obstacle that you've overcome that somebody might be going through now, or you know, you may be going through? Or,
and actually, I mentioned it earlier. My biggest obstacle was jumping in quick and looking at all those systems and processes that I probably should do before I was, you know, just getting present with the passion that I wanted to follow, and the practice that I wanted to create. And I think that's a real temptation for a lot of people, because there's so much of it out there. And, you know, not to diminish the value of it, because some of it is really valuable, but it's all in the timing. So that was my greatest obstacle, I think, is jumping in too quick and not doing it my way, not even taking the time to figure out what my way was going to be, rather just thinking I needed to do it the way that there was a way to do it.
Right.
There isn't a way to do it.
Right. And
So,
I had, I had somebody sign on a couple of weeks ago, and I said, "Are you sure you're ready?" Because I knew that she wasn't. And she said, "Oh yeah, I'm sure." And I said, "Take a couple of days, think about it, and then get back to me, because I don't ever want to, force somebody to do something that, they're not ready to do, even though, they think they are. I have enough experience now to know when somebody's not." And she called me 2 days later and she said, "Nope, I'm ready." And I said, "You're not." And she got really pissed off at me. I said, "Look at where you are. Look at your budget, number one. Look at where you are. Look at the things that you really, really need right now. Video is not one of them. As much as, do I want to work with this person? 1,000%. And we will. We're going to work together probably in the next 2 months, and that's great. But it was just one of those things that it's like, you need to put your money into X, Y, and Z. I'm not going anywhere. Video's not going anywhere. It'll be there for you, but do this." And she took another couple of days and she called me back and thanked me. And she said, "Thank you."
Yeah, you might suggest, when you get those clients, suggest that they get a coach.
Well, there you go. Well, and I have one, and now we offer a service. It's funny you say that, a different kind of coach, but we offer a service now where we have somebody who, if somebody is not comfortable with themselves on video, we offer, I call it prep work, because like a prep chef or, prep cook. But we offer a prep course for them where they can work with basically a drama coach and get really comfortable on film. So there's different reasons why they're not ready. Either that they're not ready because they're not comfortable, they're not ready because they don't have the money and they need their money for the other stuff. But yeah, you're 100% right. You could definitely, recommend a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think that midlife and late life is fraught with, what about health concerns? Some women are dealing with a lot of health concerns.
Yep.
I have clients, contacting me for things like that, or preparing for retirement. Maybe they don't want another career. They really want to retire, but there's a lot of prep that goes into that.
Yeah.
So there really is. It's just that, I don't the word transition has become so overused. And by the way, transition is the psychological phase of change. Transition is the psychological piece that happens before you make the change. But the word is so overused.
Wow.
Maybe, I don't even know what, but maybe used clumsily or whatever, that it begins to seem trite. It begins to seem like, yeah, well, I'm interested, anybody can, but that's why I like to frame it differently. And I frame it as creating a vibrant future. Yeah. Because, you are aiming towards something, whatever it is. You're aiming at creating something new. So not to, completely rule out the word transition, but I find I don't like to use it that often.
And it has so many different meanings, right? I mean,
people put so many different meanings.
Well, yeah.
But yeah.
So, but I like the creating the future. I think that when we hit, again, Piper wants to kick in. Actually, it was Skylar, I think. No, that was Piper. I think I think that when we hit a certain point, we get to look at that. We get to say, you know, what do we get to say woof? We get to say, what do I want to do now? What do I want to do next? And that's where you come in, because you help people figure that piece out. And that's a big piece. That next thing is the next most important thing in their life. It's like, what is that next thing going to look like?
I didn't talk about the pendulum theory yet, did I? The
No.
pendulum syndrome. I actually post this on social media quite a bit, over on Instagram, but because I find, and I even have a visual for it, but I find that what we do when we reach that catalyst, whatever that point is for change, that, we swing, it's like we're on a pendulum and we swing over and maybe we get really excited about it and we decide that, oh, I'm finally going to explore that. And then time goes by and slowly we just swing right back over to that familiar place, even though it's unfulfilling. And, I guess what's in the middle, or sitting on that pendulum somewhere, is fear. I mean, we're this place over here that we swing back to, after all, it might not be fulfilling, but it's probably secure and safe and all that other stuff. So there's a lot to be said for the fear factor as well. Yeah. But I think that's what most of us, I mean, I was on that pendulum. Most people are on that pendulum until finally, and then the question becomes, what is it that has the pendulum land over here finally? And it's probably either, hopefully I think it's a coach, but it could, there's a lot of things. I mean, you could even get into the scientific thing about how a pendulum swings and what it takes to break that, that equilibrium, because sometimes it lands in the middle too, which is that complete undecision, like indecision. So, but I think it's a good way to, I talk to people a lot about that, because I find that it kind of helps them to have that visual, because it keeps them mindful that there is this place over here that they want to swing over there at least occasionally, even if they're not going to land there yet. Right.
Mm-hmm. But it's good to test the waters, right? Kind of like swing that way a little bit, maybe go back and then swing a little bit more and get a little bit more comfortable with it, like walking into the ocean, dip your toe, jump out, it's cold, go in a little further.
Well, and when we're in the reflective stage, people are on that pendulum. It's natural. Especially when we get into looking at the positive past things that they remember, because along with that, they also remember ones that aren't positive.
Right. And
so then it's like, yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't be, So there's a lot to this. Obviously, it's a dynamic process.
Well, I mean, we're not going to uncover everything, in this one interview, but, so you alluded earlier, what is your differentiator? What makes you different than another, change agent out there?
Yeah. So I think two things that I've already mentioned, but I may not have called them out as differentiators. But the first one is definitely the power of this process. That's just, I mean, we develop kind of a proven roadmap. And I think if I were to refer to myself as a transition coach, then I would say this powerful process is my differentiator, along with that other thing I mentioned, which is I have my approach to transition is both inside out and outside in. And so a client is never just, overwhelmingly in that deep internal process. There's always outer things that we're considering and participating in and act. So they're active. It's kind of like, if you're depressed, you don't want to just sit there and be depressed.
Right.
I hate to bring up that word, but I couldn't think of a better example.
No, I mean, it's, it is in the dictionary. I get what you're saying though. But so who is your ideal client? I mean, I know we touched on a little bit, but who is like the perfect ideal client for you?
Anybody at a crossroads, whether it's a change or growth, because a crossroads can mean either of those things. It could be someone preparing for retirement. It could be redefining identity and self-perception, by the way, which is another big part of that regenerative process. It could be navigating personal crossroads that have nothing to do with a new thing, but just internal crossroads. It could be women just navigating midlife challenges. It could be men navigating midlife crisis, even though we don't like to use that phrase. Or, as I said earlier, it could be a woman managing health concerns. So I like to think of it as the broad umbrella of crossroads being change or growth, or both. And then the other ideal client, which could also be a consultant, by the way, is consultants, and I distinguish it by consultants working in large firms, because that's much different than an independent consultant or even a consultant at a small firm. So, and I'm great at helping them manage those complexities because I know them so well. And I love those clients, by the way, because they often, and by the way, it's not that, I mean, everybody goes through this process regardless. Different clients spend different amounts of time in each phase, but nonetheless. So yeah, those are definitely my two ideal client groups.
Wow. Okay. So for those of y'all listening that are in that group, I encourage you to talk to Cheryl because she's been there. I think that makes the biggest difference. There are so many coaches out there that, say they help people in a certain arena, but they haven't gone through it themselves. So how do you really do it well, right? But you've not only, you've actually gone through it and you've gone through the process yourself, which makes you more credible to be able to, and you've gone through both. You've gone through, the corporate piece as well as, your own transition. So, helping people in corporate and then your own personal transition. So I think that, that gives you that leg up, because having gone through it just gives you it gives you a bird's eye view of what somebody's going through. And then you can really, guide them well. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
thank you for that, by the way.
Well, I mean, it's true. There are a lot of people out there that, oh yeah, I'm going to help you do this. Oh, well, have you been through it? No. Well, then how the hell are you going to help me?
The other thing is you can't just have been there. You have to have coach skill. And we're finding that is an all too common, but I don't want to get into coach issues, but I think you need both. You need to be a skilled coach and have had some experience with what you're helping people with.
Right. And even being coached yourself, because, I think it's all encompassing. I really do. I think that just having all of that, in my wife's favorite word, all of that in your bucket, right? To be able to run your toolkit, to be able to really just get in and do the work and recognize the different scenarios and be like, oh, that's what this is. And I know that that's what this is because I've been there, so I think that gives it, again, it just adds credibility to it. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because what I would say is the best place to visit me is on Instagram. What I love about Instagram is highlights. And I've got great highlights there. I walk through my journey. I've got a coaching highlight, and it's where I'm posting most right now about what I'm doing. So that's I would say the first place. The second place, I'm on Facebook, and I do both business and personal stuff there. As you know, I haven't still, one would think that LinkedIn would be my first place. It hasn't been, but I'm going to go there. I'm going to launch there.
I know.
It's just a matter of time. So anyway,
you're dipping your toes. You're dipping your toes.
What?
I said you're dipping your toes.
Yeah. I'm dipping my toes in LinkedIn, but I am there. So you can definitely see my profile and all of that. It's not like I don't have a presence there. I'm just not spending a lot of time there. But yeah, so those are my three. I'm not on TikTok or any of those other. I don't dance well enough to be on TikTok, is what I figure.
I think that would make it fun, though, right? I think because man, those people there really do dance well, and then there's other people that post themselves making fun of the people that dance well that really can't dance. So it's kind of fun. And your website, of course. Yes,
definitely go to my website. You can also look at my journal on my website. There's a lot on my website. So go there. Go there first.
See?
I just I just discovered that, believe it or not, we don't have these URLs on my website. And so I just queued my website designer. I said, would you please put them on? I can't believe
your social links are on your page.
So they're going to be there by the time whoever goes there.
Okay. By the time this podcast is airing, all of her, they used to be called fish eyes. They're not anymore, but all of the icons will be active.
Yeah.
The social icons. So, well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to, spend time with me and my audience, and to, come in and, redo this, because I know the first time we had some issues, and, I think that being able to come back when
this is a charm this time.
Yeah, this was easy. This was simple.
And thank you too, by the way, for allowing me to really kind of describe what I do and how I do it.
No, absolutely. I think, the first time we tried it was when you were in that place that we were talking about. So, and I think we also had some technical difficulties. We had some today too, but we pushed through that crap. It's always working with technology. It's always going to be something. So, but thank you for sharing you and your story and your journey and your expertise with my audience. And the last question that I ask all my guests is, what lights your fire?
Well, related to what we've been talking about, I would say equipping clients to pursue a path of, passion, purpose, and fulfillment. I mean, along with photography, of course, but that really does light me up. And I love phases of my process as well. So
cool.
Hopefully when this airs, I'm not going to look as white as I look on my screen.
You don't look as white as you think you do.
Good.
You don't. I have like 3 monitors on my face, plus whatever the hell is going on with whatever else here. Plus, I just got out of the shower, so my hair is looking very fresh.
Well, here we are. Your audience is going to get to really see the inside and out of us. Here we are talking about how we look, our hair, everything else.
Oh, they already know. I mean,
but you know what? It's a good way to end, isn't it? Because talk about authenticity, right?
Yes. Well, that's it, right? I mean, my audience knows that this is, I'm very authentic, and so is my podcast. And I encourage everybody who's on my podcast to be.
We get an A+ today on authenticity.
Yes, Cope, what do you think? A+? Get a thumbs up in the background. Yeah. All right. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone, and I'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out for an hour plus once again. I hope that you found Cheryl as charming and I think she's a great person. I think she's really great at what she does. So I hope that you found that as well. If you got some golden nuggets from this episode, go and download it, like it, share, subscribe. When you subscribe, you get a notification that a new episode of the Cookbook is out. And what do I always say? Who doesn't want a new episode of the Cookbook? So thank you all. I appreciate you getting here. We're getting more and more downloads, which means we're getting higher and higher up. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you all. And until the next time we see each other, go out and find what lights your fire. See you, everyone.